Hey everyone, this is Callie. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I'm creating a card using products from the latest card kit from Simon Says Stamp. This is the card kit for February 2025. It is filled with lots of beautiful ephemera and vintage images. This is the Vintage Love Note stamp set here, and it coordinates perfectly with the ephemera set that comes in this kit. So I'm excited to use the two together. There are some watercolor paper, and in addition to that, 3 watercolor pencils from the Distress line. So I'm going to be using the colors that I got to make this card. The colors will vary from kit to kit, but who are we kidding? We all have these watercolor pencils, right? So I'm using 2 of the pinks here, and I'm scribbling it onto my work surface because I really want to wet that pigment so that it blends nicely onto this watercolor paper. And I'm doing the same with this lighter pink. As you can see, it doesn't blend out quite as well, and I'm just going to rework that until it smooths out and all of the chunks are gone. And to further get this organic watercolor finish on my cardstock, I'm going to heat set and then apply additional layers because I really want a lot of movement on this background for my card. I'm just making sure to get color from edge to edge all the way around here before heat setting this very first layer. And once I heat set that, I can go ahead and work on a second layer. I don't even make sure that it's completely dry. I just want to make sure that pigment isn't going to move around further. So I'm applying a second layer here, and again, just adding splotches of color here and there and letting it move organically, drying that so that it doesn't move any further, and then applying a third layer as well. So you just keep playing with it until you're happy with the panel. I am happy with this, so I'm going to go ahead and dry it completely for stamping. Now I'm going to use a few images from the Vintage Love Note stamp set, and I'm going to use my third watercolor pencil to use it for stamping. And what I do is I'm going to use a damp brush and get that pigment from the watercolor pencil. You can apply it directly as I am here, but I have found through making this card that it is easier to apply that pigment using the brush instead. So I'll swipe that color across the stamped images, and I'll give these stamped images a watercolor look as well. So the amount of saturation of color depends on how much pigment you apply using your brush. And you'll see here in a little bit, I'm going to use a microfiber cloth to kind of draw up some of that color because I thought it was a little bit too intense for me. And I'll keep moving around with all the images from this stamp set to apply different varieties of texture and different shades of this brown watercolor to the background of this card. So because there are different hues of this brown on this card, it looks like it's multi-dimensional, and the first few images that I stamped that are a bit darker seem to be standing out more or gives off the perception that it's closer. So I love this organic and unintentional look on this background. And next I'm using the same brown watercolor pencil to apply pigment in a wet form as splatters all over this panel. Then I'll use my microfiber cloth again to pick up the excess color and liquid that I don't want on it, and it just softens everything up a little bit and less drying time. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim this panel. I'm going to trim it off by 1/4 inch off all of the sides for a border. I'm trying my best to preserve the areas that I like better, so some areas I'm going to cut off more than others, but in the end it's a 1/4 inch margin for an A2 sized card. I'm using an acrylic block to just lift my panel up from my hard work surface so that I can run this Tim Holtz Distresser across my edges so that I can roughen them up and distress them a little. This is a Tim Holtz paper distresser, and it's got a round circular blade with several notches and openings so that you can distress your paper from any angle. So it's multi-directional, and all I'm doing is just running that blade against my paper, and it just gives it this jagged distress look. And then I'm going to go in with Distress Oxide ink in Vintage Photo and just roughen that color up a little bit at the edges and add some more brown softly here and there. Using a tiny blending tool, it just allows me to add a simple soft amount of color, not too much, and I'm able to control how much ink is being applied. So it doesn't look like much, but it's very soft and subtle. Now here is the Tim Holtz Ideology ephemera pack that comes with this card kit. There is so much in here for you to use, lots of floral images, postage things. So I've picked out a few things to use here, and in order to apply this first ephemera image, I'm going to use my sewing machine and just sew across the top and secure it down a little bit at the bottom as well. So here it is. I ran to my sewing machine, and now I'm just clipping off the extra pieces of thread that are hanging off. And then I'll use the 3D foam squares that are also included in this card kit to attach my other images for additional dimension. For the butterfly, I'm just going to add 2 little squares on the spine of the butterfly. That way I can bend the wings up a little bit and give it a bit more dimension. I'm going to place this entire panel back in a MISTI because I want to stamp a sentiment. And using this VersaFine Clair ink pad from the card kit, it's also included, you can get a really crisp and clear stamped sentiment. And so I'm going to go ahead and stamp that and then work on my border. This Pinnacle Hearts embossing folder is also a part of the card kit, so I'm just trying to use whatever I can from this card kit to create a card that will showcase all the items from this card kit. And I'll use the same Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink to ink blend around the edges so that I can further draw attention to these embossed hearts that are going to show up around the corners as I attach my top panel to this background. And I love using some thin 3D foam squares for anything that gets attached to an embossed panel because I feel like it attaches way better to any raised or depressed areas in the embossed panel. Then I'll use some liquid glue to attach the entire panel to a card base, and that will finish my card using this Vintage Love Notes card kit for February 2025. I love that you can use distress watercolor pencils to create such a delicate background using some vintage images from this set. And I want to show you the first card that I made for the social media reel for Simon Says Stamp 2. This one has more of a purple color theme. I created the background in the same way with the watercolor pencils and embossed it as well, and then used the VersaFine Clair ink to stamp my sentiments and the other images on the background. I hope you enjoyed the inspiration from this Vintage Love Notes card kit. Thank you so much for stopping by, and be sure to check out all the links below if you're interested in any of the products that I used. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.